This is African American History is American History. Welcome. I'm your host, Harlan Kearsley. This program's goal is to foster understanding, promote discussion, and expand knowledge through stories of historical events, bios of unsung heroes, as well as timely and relevant news stories which will paint a vivid picture of the effects of segregation, discrimination, and bigotry on the lives of both blacks and whites. Comparisons will be made between the many racially fractured periods of American history and what's going on right now. Slavery was abolished just 150 years ago. Jim Crow only 50 years ago. Yet stop and frisk, voter ID, stand your ground, income inequality, and a host of other current problems are proof that their detrimental effects continue to be felt, and that the struggle for equal rights for all must continue. The whites of Yazoo City, Mississippi were already upset by the civil rights push brought on by Reconstruction, so it really didn't sit well with them to find that Deputy Collector William Henderson Foote, a black man, carried a badge and weapon in his line of duty. Deputy collectors, who were commonly referred to as revenuers, were part of the United States Treasury's Bureau of Internal Revenue. These agents were the predecessors of today's Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, or ATF. In 1791, the ATF's long legacy was established when the first tax on whiskey was passed under President George Washington and Department of the Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton. Now, once the Office of the Commissioner of the Internal Revenue was created in 1792, the hiring and special training of the group of men who would collect and enforce the nation's alcohol taxes began. They would become the first federal revenue officers. The duties of the deputy collector included collecting tax from licensed wholesale and retail distilleries and arresting and prosecuting tax violators. By 1879, deputy collectors were armed and carried badges. On July 1, 1862, Congress diversified the ATF by hiring men and women, African Americans, Hispanics, Native Americans, Asian Americans, and inspectors of diverse cultures and religious backgrounds. But it would not be until 1965 and the passage of the civil rights legislation that these pioneers of the American federal law enforcement community were fully afforded the equality that many of their fellow officers often took for granted. During the Prohibition era, the deputy collectors were dispatched to seize illicit distilleries and moonshine products. By 1934, after Prohibition was repealed, the agents went back to their sole responsibilities of collecting taxes. Only this time, they went by the title of investigators and special agents. William Henderson Foote was a revenuer, a deputy tax collector with the United States Treasury's Bureau of Internal Revenue. And according to the ATF, he was the first African-American law enforcement officer to be killed in the line of duty after Reconstruction. On December 29, 1883, 40-year-old Deputy Collector Foote was attending church on Christmas Eve in the town of Yazoo City, Mississippi, when a concerned citizen burst in, all out of breath.
Mr. Foote! Mr. Foote!
Mary? What is it? What's wrong?
3 white men, Mr. Foote. Oh, they whipping that poor Negro something awful.
Who? Who is it?
Don't know. He a stranger in town. They say he broke the law, but he didn't break no law. Them 3 are just bent on keeping all Negroes out of town they don't know. Please now, you gotta come. They like to kill that poor man, and he ain't done nothing to deserve that.
Let's go.
This is African American History is American History. Once at the scene of the beating, Foote immediately placed himself between the aggressors and the victim. Foote noticed that all 3 men were armed with pistols holstered in their pants belts. He knew that this would most likely end badly.
All right, gentlemen. I'm asking you to stop what you're doing right now. If this man has committed a crime, I promise you he will be charged. But you can't just simply take the law into your own hands. No, I'm sure you three know that.
Who the hell are you talking to, boy? You just shut your mouth. We don't take no orders from no niggas.
A's all liquored up, Mr. Foote.
Mary, I want you to get out of here now. Look here. I'm going to ask you three one more time.
You can ask a million times, boy. We don't answer to you.
Pin a badge on his black ass and he thinks he's better than us. Ain't that right, boy? You think you're better than us? I asked you a question, boy.
Hey, Carl, give him a taste of the whip. That ought to teach him not to step out of his place with white folks.
It's 3 against 1, boy. That there nigger on the ground ain't no condition to help you. No, it's just you and the 3 of us.
That ain't true.
2 black men, both armed with pistols, stepped toward Deputy Collector Foote and stood with him.
Don't worry, Bill. We got your back.
This can still end without any more bloodshed. As an officer of the law, I am ordering you three to walk away now.
You ain't gonna be able to reason with him, Bill.
Yeah, but I figured it was worth a try.
Just then, the white man holding the whip throws it to the ground with one hand while reaching for his pistol with the other. Suddenly, when it was all over, the 3 white aggressors were dead. Deputy Collector Foote and the 2 other African-American men were arrested by local authorities and held in connection with their deaths. The original victim, who Deputy Collector Foote was protecting, had escaped during the melee. He was later shot and killed by a posse while attempting to arrest him. It was never clear what, if any, crime he had committed. Even though Foote and the other black men were arrested, that just wasn't enough for the outraged mob. The fact it was the white man who started the shooting, that didn't seem to matter. All that mattered was that white men were dead, killed by black men, and they would have to pay for it.
Bring out that damn revenue collector. We want him first.
By late in the afternoon, the mob stormed the jail. Foote sat calmly in his jail cell, listening to the taunts of the angry crowd, which had grown to over 200. As the mob spilled into the jail, Foote stood up, bracing himself against the far wall of the cell.
Come on out here, boy! All right. You all want me so bad? Let's go! Who's first?
A reporter for the New York Times, who happened to be in Yazoo City, wrote,
Foote fought like a tiger, but there were just too many of them. The mob swarmed Foote like an army of ants, and then, in an act of extrajudicial punishment, Foote was executed. His forehead was shot away, and blood and brain covered a space on the floor a yard square. Nearly all the bullets had been sent to his head. He was so mutilated as to be scarcely recognizable. The other 3 detained men met the same fate.
Deputy Collector William Henderson Foote had served with the Bureau of Internal Revenue for about 3 years. Along with his duties as a deputy collections agent, he was also a civil rights leader, state legislator, and a local constable in Yazoo City. He was buried at Cedar Hill Cemetery in Vicksburg, Mississippi, and was survived by his wife and 3 children. Since he was not listed among the deaths of white agents, his story of heroism and courage was not known until 129 years later. This has been African American History is American History. The episode you've been listening to was written, directed, and produced by Harlan Kearsley. Production coordinator is Sarah Cushing Downs. The cast included Soraya Butler, Robert McKay, and Jeffrey Schubert. I'm Harlan Kearsley. On behalf of everyone here at African American History is American History, thank you for listening, and remember, None of us can truly embrace the future until we first confront the past. African American History is American History. Copyright H.C. Kearsley, 2016.